The taste of birthday cake turned to ash in my mouth as I stood in our living room doorway, watching my parents methodically pack away their lives into neat, labeled boxes. My 21st birthday, and they couldn't even wait until after the celebration to drop their bomb. I'm Amelia, and this is the moment my family shattered. "You weren't supposed to be home for another hour," Mother said, not even looking up from the box she was taping shut. Her perfectly manicured nails gleamed as she smoothed down the packing tape with practiced efficiency. The salon finished early. My voice sounded hollow, even to my own ears. "What's happening?" Father emerged from their bedroom carrying another box. "We're moving to Singapore. The opportunity came up suddenly, and we had to act fast." "Singapore?" The word felt foreign on my tongue. "When?" "Tonight." Mother's voice carried that familiar clinical tone she used when delivering bad news to her patients. "Our flight leaves at midnight." I stepped further into the room, my new dress suddenly feeling too tight, too constraining. "But what about me?" They exchanged that look, the one they'd perfected over years of silent communication. Finally, Father set down his box and cleared his throat. "You're 21 now, Amelia. An adult. You've always been independent, and frankly, this is better for everyone." "Better?" The word came out as a whisper. "You've been a hindrance to our plans for years," Mother said, still focused on her packing. "We've put off this move 3 times already because of your various situations." My hands began to shake. "Situations? You mean my hospitalization after the car accident? My college graduation?" "Among other things." She finally looked up, her eyes cold and distant. "The truth is, we've outgrown this life, this town, this—" She waved her hand vaguely in my direction. "We need more." "More than your daughter?" My voice cracked. Father stepped forward, reaching for his wallet. "We're not completely abandoning you. There's enough in this account to cover 6 months of rent and expenses. By then, you should have figured out your next steps." The credit card he held out seemed to mock me. "You've been planning this. How long?" "Does it matter?" Mother interjected. "The decision is made. We've already signed the contracts, sold the house. The new owners take possession next week." I felt the room spinning. "Where am I supposed to go?" "You're a smart girl," Father said, dropping the card on a nearby box when I didn't take it. "You'll figure it out. You always do." "Maybe your grandmother will take you in," Mother added, her tone suggesting she'd already discussed this with Grandma Evelyn. "She's always been overly attached to you anyway." The carefully arranged flowers on the coffee table caught my eye, my birthday bouquet, delivered this morning with a card that read, "To our dearest daughter." The lies were everywhere, wrapped in pretty paper and false smiles. "I got into medical school," I said quietly. "I was going to tell you tonight at dinner. I got the acceptance letter yesterday." For the first time, Mother's movements faltered. Father's expression flickered with something, pride, regret, before smoothing back into careful neutrality. "That's wonderful," he said, but his eyes were already drifting back to the boxes. "You'll do well, I'm sure." "We need to finish packing," Mother added, effectively ending the conversation. "The movers will be here in an hour for the boxes we're shipping." I stood there, watching them resume their methodical dismantling of our family home, feeling like a ghost in my own life. The birthday dress I'd spent hours choosing suddenly felt like a costume, a child playing at being grown up while the adults made the real decisions. My phone buzzed in my purse. Probably Ethan, wondering why I wasn't at our meeting spot for the birthday dinner he'd planned. How could I tell him that while I was getting my hair done for our celebration, my parents were plotting their escape? I turned and walked out, leaving behind the credit card, the flowers, and the last remnants of my childhood illusions. They didn't call after me. They didn't even look up. In the driveway, I paused, keys in hand, and realized with startling clarity that this wasn't just an ending, it was a beginning. They thought they were writing me out of their story, but really, they were just giving me the first page of my own. And revenge, I decided, would make one hell of a opening chapter. Grandma Evelyn's hands trembled as she set down her teacup. 3 days since my parents' departure, and the betrayal still hung thick in the air like smoke after a house fire. "They've been planning this for over a year," she said, sliding a stack of papers across her antique coffee table. "I found these when I was helping your mother organize her study last spring." The documents blurred before my eyes. Bank statements, property listings in Singapore, email correspondences dated months back. Each page revealed another carefully constructed step in their escape plan. "Why didn't you tell me?" My voice cracked. "Would you have believed me?" Evelyn's eyes, so like my mother's but warmer, searched my face. "Karen, your mother. She's always been skilled at making others doubt their own perceptions." A memory surfaced. Me at 16, telling mother about catching father in a heated phone conversation with an unknown woman. She'd convinced me I'd misunderstood, that I was being dramatic. The woman turned out to be his Singapore business contact. "They've listed the house for sale months ago," I said, scanning a real estate contract, while I was still living there, while they were helping me plan for medical school. "Your acceptance letter," Evelyn said quietly. "Did you tell them?" "Yes." I laughed bitterly. Right before they walked out, Mother didn't even pause in her packing. The doorbell rang, interrupting our conversation. Evelyn's housekeeper showed Aunt Lily in, her face pinched with concern. "I just got off the phone with Karen," she announced without preamble. "She's furious that you're staying with Mother instead of following their plan." "Their plan?" I echoed. "The apartment they arranged, the one the credit card was supposed to pay for." Lily's eyes narrowed. "They're saying you're being deliberately difficult." "Of course they are." I stood up, pacing the length of Evelyn's living room. "Heaven forbid their perfectly orchestrated abandonment doesn't go according to schedule." "Amelia," Evelyn's voice carried a warning note, "don't let bitterness poison you." Too late. The words tasted like metal in my mouth. "Did you know they've been transferring money to offshore accounts? It's all here in black and white. Years of planning, while I worked part-time jobs to avoid asking them for help with college expenses." Lily picked up one of the bank statements. "This can't be legal." "It probably isn't." Evelyn's hands clasped tightly in her lap, which is why I've already contacted my lawyer. I stopped pacing. "What?" "I'm changing my will," she said firmly. "Everything goes to you. They won't be able to touch it." "Mother, think carefully," Lily cautioned. "Karen won't take this well." Karen stopped being concerned about my wishes the day she decided to abandon her only child. Evelyn's voice carried steel beneath its softness. My phone buzzed. Ethan, again. I'd been avoiding his calls since that night, unsure how to explain that my perfectly curated family life had been a house of cards all along. "You should talk to him," Lily said gently. "He came by the house yesterday looking for you." "I can't." I swallowed hard. "Not yet." "Your parents' choices don't define you," Evelyn said, rising slowly from her chair. "But your response to them will." The doorbell rang again. This time Uncle Derek stood in the doorway, his expression grave. "They're selling everything," he said without greeting. "The house, the vacation property, even Karen's medical practice. Mark's already accepted a partnership position in Singapore." "How long have you known?" I demanded. His silence was answer enough. "Get out." My voice shook with fury. "All of you who knew, who watched them plan this and said nothing, get out." "Amelia?" Lily started, but Evelyn raised her hand. "Let her be," she said quietly. "She needs time." They filed out, leaving only Evelyn and me in the suddenly too quiet room. I picked up another document, a lease agreement for a luxury apartment in Singapore's most exclusive district. "They're going to regret this," I said, my voice steady for the first time in days. "I'm going to make sure of it." Evelyn touched my shoulder gently. "Revenge is a double-edged sword, dear one. Then I'll learn to bleed." I met her eyes in the mirror above her fireplace. They taught me that much, at least, how to smile through pain. The papers in my hands held more than just evidence of their betrayal. They held the seeds of their destruction. And I intended to plant them carefully, water them with tears, and watch them grow into something that would shatter their carefully constructed new life just as thoroughly as they'd shattered mine. The storage unit door groaned open, revealing 21 years of carefully curated lies. Mother's meticulous labeling system made it easy to find what I was looking for: Boxes marked family documents and financial records stood in neat rows against the back wall. I'd found the key in Father's old desk drawer, along with a receipt for a year's prepaid rent on this unit. They'd planned to keep these secrets locked away, probably hoping I'd never think to look here. "You shouldn't be doing this alone," Ethan said from behind me. After a week of avoiding him, I'd finally called. Some truths needed a witness. "I need to know everything." I pulled out the first box, dust coating my fingers. "Help me or leave." He answered by grabbing another box. The first files revealed nothing surprising: old tax returns, insurance policies. But deeper in the second box, I found it, a folder labeled Singapore Initiative 2019. 2 years of planning, documented in excruciating detail. "Look at this," I said, holding up a series of emails. "They started transferring money offshore before I even graduated high school." Ethan read over my shoulder, his breath warm against my neck. They were setting up shell companies. And here's the best part. I pulled out a familiar document. "Remember when they convinced me to sign over my college fund to better manage it? They used it as seed money for their Singapore venture." "That's theft," Ethan said quietly. "That's family," I corrected, bitter laughter bubbling up. At least, their version of it. My phone buzzed, another message from Mother. They'd been alternating between threats and guilt trips since discovering Grandma Evelyn's plan to change her will. "They're getting desperate," I murmured, showing Ethan the message. "Listen to this. Your grandmother's mental state is questionable. We're only trying to protect the family legacy." "Protect it for themselves, you mean?" A flash of color caught my eye. A red leather diary wedged between files. Mother's handwriting filled its pages, dating back 3 years. Oh, God. My hands shook as I read. They never planned to tell me in person. There's a letter here they wrote, explaining everything. They were going to mail it after they left. Ethan's arm wrapped around my shoulders. "Amelia. Wait, there's more." I flipped through the pages. "They've been monitoring my bank accounts, my phone records. They knew about my medical school acceptance 2 weeks ago. They read my emails." "That's why they rushed their departure," Ethan realized. "They knew you'd want their support during medical school." The storage unit's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I absorbed this new betrayal. Every headache-inducing flicker matched the pulse of rage building behind my eyes. My phone buzzed again. Uncle Derek this time. "Your parents are filing for conservatorship over your grandmother. They're claiming she's being manipulated." The diary fell from my numb fingers. "They're trying to take control of her assets before she can change her will." "They won't succeed," Ethan said firmly. "We have evidence of their planning, their financial manipulation. Evidence they never thought I'd find." I gestured at the storage unit. "They're getting sloppy, desperate." A new message lit up my phone. From Sophie, my cousin. "Mom and Dad are fighting about you. Dad says what Aunt Karen and Uncle Mark did was wrong, but Mom's taking their side. Things are getting ugly." I looked at the scattered documents around us. Proof of years of calculated betrayal. "They're not just destroying our family," I said slowly. "They're forcing everyone to choose sides." "What are you gonna do?" I picked up Mother's diary, its pages heavy with secrets. They taught me well, how to plan, how to wait, how to strike where it hurts most. I met Ethan's concerned gaze. They just never thought I'd use those lessons against them. "Amelia, revenge won't heal this." "No," I agreed, tucking the diary into my bag. "But it might prevent them from hurting anyone else. They're trying to take everything from Grandma Evelyn now. Who's next?" The storage unit's door slammed shut behind us, the sound echoing like a judge's gavel. In my bag, the diary pressed against my side, a weapon loaded with their own words, their own confessions. They'd taught me another lesson, too. Family secrets make the best ammunition. The engagement ring caught the morning light as I twisted it around my finger. Ethan had proposed last night, after weeks of careful planning. It should have been the happiest moment of my life. Instead, I sat in Grandma Evelyn's lawyer's office, watching my world tilt on its axis once again. "Your parents' legal team has filed an emergency petition," Mr. Chen said, sliding documents across his desk. They're claiming elder abuse and undue influence. Evelyn's hand found mine under the table. They won't succeed. They don't need to succeed, I said, the realization hitting me like ice water. They just need to drag this out long enough to drain your resources. There's more. Mr. Chen's expression tightened. They've submitted evidence suggesting you've been manipulating your grandmother's medication schedule to affect her decision-making capacity. The room spun slightly. That's impossible. I've never... They have pharmacy records, he interrupted gently, showing irregular refill patterns over the past month. Evelyn's grip tightened. That's because I switched pharmacies. They're also claiming financial exploitation. He tapped another document. Large withdrawals from your accounts coinciding with visits to your grandmother. My engagement ring felt suddenly heavy. The withdrawals were for the medical school deposit, and Ethan's ring. They're building a narrative, Mr. Chen explained. One that paints you as an opportunistic granddaughter taking advantage of a vulnerable elderly woman. The irony burned like acid. While they're the ones trying to seize control of her assets. My phone buzzed. Aunt Lily. We need to talk. Derek's found something. They're not just attacking me anymore, I said, standing. They're trying to destroy my future. Medical school, my engagement, my relationship with Grandma. They want to take it all. Amelia. Evelyn's voice carried a warning. Don't let anger cloud your judgment. No, I agreed, picking up the legal documents. Anger makes things crystal clear. Uncle Derek was waiting at his office, looking more haunted than usual. You need to see this. He pulled up security footage from my parents' medical practice. There I was, entering after hours 2 weeks ago, except I'd never been there. Someone used your old keycard, he explained. They accessed patient files, financial records. Your mother's claiming you stole confidential information. They're framing me. The words tasted like ashes. But who? Sophie. Derek wouldn't meet my eyes. Your mother convinced her it was for your own good, to stop you from making a terrible mistake. My cousin, my friend, another betrayal to add to the growing collection. They're good at this, I said quietly, turning family against family. Not everyone. Derek pulled out a USB drive. I made copies of everything before they could alter the timestamps. And there's something else. Emails between your parents and their Singapore partners dating back 5 years. My phone buzzed again. Ethan, this time. Your parents just called me. They're saying they have proof you've been lying about everything. I looked at my reflection in Derek's office window, at the girl my parents had shaped with their careful lessons in manipulation and control. They'd taught me too well. Tell them you believe them, I said. Tell them you're having doubts about me. What? Why would I? Because we need them to think they're winning. I touched the USB drive in my pocket. They're not the only ones who can play this game. Derek cleared his throat. Amelia, revenge won't give you back what they took. I don't want it back. I met his gaze steadily. I want to build something new. Something they can't touch. But first, I need to make sure they can never hurt anyone else the way they hurt me. My phone lit up with another message. From Mother this time. We're only trying to protect the family legacy. Stop fighting us and we can work something out. I thought of the evidence in my possession, of Sophie's betrayal, of the careful trap they were laying. They expected me to react with anger, to make mistakes, to prove their narrative right. Instead, I would give them exactly what they wanted. A daughter who appeared to be falling apart under pressure. Let them think they were winning. After all, they'd taught me the most important lesson of all. The best revenge is served with a smile. The whispers followed me through the hospital corridors like poison gas. 2 nurses stopped talking when I passed, their eyes sliding away from mine. In the cafeteria, a group of residents huddled over their phones, glancing up at me with poorly concealed interest. I found out why when I checked my email. Someone, Mother, obviously, had sent an anonymous letter to the medical school board questioning my mental stability and ethical fitness. Copies had gone to every major hospital in the region. They're saying you manipulated your grandmother's medical records, Sophie said, appearing beside me like a ghost. And that you're unstable, potentially dangerous to patients. I closed my laptop slowly. Is that why you helped them frame me at the clinic? Because you believe I'm unstable? She flinched. I didn't. They said it was for your own good, that you needed help. Help? I laughed, the sound sharp enough to make nearby students turn. Like how they helped me by stealing my college fund? Or by abandoning me on my birthday? That's not... She stopped, twisting her hands. They're saying you've been lying about everything. That you're the one who... Get out! My voice was steady, even as my hands shook. And tell them their plan worked. Everyone's talking about the unstable med student who might snap at any moment. My phone buzzed. Ethan, canceling our dinner plans. Again. His messages had grown increasingly distant since my parents contacted him. Another email arrived, from the medical school board. My admission was under review pending investigation. I walked out of the hospital into the rain, not bothering with an umbrella. The water mixed with tears I refused to acknowledge. Amelia. Uncle Derek stood by my car, holding a folder. You need to see this. Inside were printouts of more emails, my parents coordinating with their lawyers, planning each step of my destruction. They'd anticipated every move, set up every domino perfectly. They're thorough, I said, voice hollow. I'll give them that. There's more. Derek hesitated. They're planning to have Evelyn declared incompetent. They've already lined up doctors willing to testify. My hands crumpled the papers. Of course they have. Mother probably treated their children for free, built up favors over years. You need to stop fighting them, he said quietly. They won't stop until they've destroyed everything you care about. I looked at my reflection in the car window, at the girl they'd created, the one they thought they could control or destroy at will. No. Amelia. They want me to break? I turned to face him. Fine, I'll break. I'll have a very public meltdown, give them exactly what they want. Let them think they've won. And then? I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the evidence I'd gathered. Then I'll show everyone exactly who they really are. Every manipulation, every lie, every betrayal, documented in their own words. They'll never forgive you. Good. I got into my car, because I'll never forgive them either. At home, Grandma Evelyn was waiting with Aunt Lily. Their faces told me they'd heard the news. They're saying terrible things about you, Lily said, reaching for me. I stepped back. They're saying true things about themselves. They just don't know it yet. Revenge won't heal this wound, Evelyn warned. I don't want healing. I pulled out Mother's diary, the USB drive, the emails. I want justice, and I want them to feel what I felt, watching everything they built crumble around them. My phone lit up with another message, from Mother. Stop this now, and we can still fix things. You're only hurting yourself. I thought of the medical school board, of Ethan's growing distance, of Sophie's betrayal. They were right, I was hurting. But pain, I'd learned, could be weaponized. I'm going to give them exactly what they want, I told Evelyn and Lily. The unstable daughter, the family scandal, the public meltdown, and when they're celebrating their victory, when they think they've finally broken me completely. I left the sentence unfinished, but I could see in their eyes that they understood. Sometimes the only way to win against masters of manipulation is to play their game better than they do, and they'd taught me so very well. The annual family charity gala became my stage for destruction. Mother and Father had flown back specifically for this event. Their reputation demanded it. They'd spent 20 years building their image in this community, and I was about to tear it down in 20 minutes. I wore red, their favorite color for special occasions, the dress they'd bought me for my college graduation before they'd decided I was disposable. Ethan stood across the room, deliberately avoiding my eyes. He'd chosen his side. You shouldn't be here, Sophie whispered as I passed. Everyone's talking about your condition. That's the point. I smiled, the expression sharp enough to make her step back. Mother held court near the stage, elegant in black silk, while Father worked the room with practiced charm. They'd orchestrated everything perfectly, the sympathetic whispers about their troubled daughter, the concerned glances, the carefully crafted narrative of parents trying to protect their unstable child. Ladies and gentlemen, the event coordinator announced, we'll now hear from Dr. Karen about this year's charitable initiatives. Mother approached the podium, radiating professional warmth. I moved closer, USB drive heavy in my clutch. Before we begin, I called out, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room, I think we should discuss a different kind of charity. The kind that involves stealing from your daughter and abandoning her on her birthday. The silence turned sharp. Mother's smile didn't waver. Amelia, sweetheart, this isn't the time or place for... It's exactly the time. I pulled out my phone, connecting it to the presentation system. Let's talk about offshore accounts, about forged documents, about 20 years of calculated manipulation. Father appeared at my elbow, gripped tight on my arm. You're making a scene. No, I corrected, shaking free. I'm telling the truth. Finally. The first email appeared on the screen. Mother discussing their escape plans years ago, then bank statements, legal documents, their carefully documented betrayal displayed in high definition. She's unwell, Mother announced to the crowd, voice thick with manufactured concern. We've tried to keep this private, but... Private? I laughed. Like how you privately drained my college fund? Or privately planned to have Grandma Evelyn declared incompetent? Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I saw Uncle Derek move toward the exit. Aunt Lily's hand pressed to her mouth. Sophie's face pale with recognition. Then everything went dark. The backup generators kicked in, but the damage was done. My evidence vanished with the power. Father stood by the electrical panel, key in hand. This is exactly what we've been worried about, Mother said smoothly. These paranoid delusions, these public outbursts. Security approached, summoned by Father's discreet signal. I saw Ethan turn away, unable to watch. You taught me too well, I said as they reached for me. About manipulation, about control, about destroying people while looking like the victim. I learned from the best. Take her out quietly, Father instructed. She's clearly having another episode. The crowd parted as security led me away, their faces a blur of pity and secondhand embarrassment, exactly as my parents had planned. Their unstable daughter finally breaking down publicly, proving everything they'd been saying. Outside, the night air hit like a slap. My phone buzzed. Grandma Evelyn. They're on their way to my house with the doctors. I'm sorry, dear one. I couldn't stop them. Another message followed, from the medical school board. My admission wasn't just under review anymore. It had been revoked. I sank onto the steps, the concrete cold through my dress. They'd won. Every carefully laid plan, every piece of evidence, every attempt at justice, destroyed by a simple power switch and years of carefully cultivated influence. A shadow fell over me. Uncle Derek stood there, face grim. They're having Evelyn committed tonight. They've already filed the emergency papers. It's over, I whispered, the fight draining out of me. They've taken everything. Not everything. He held out a phone. Not mine, but one I recognized from the storage unit. Mother's old device, the one she'd replaced before leaving. What? They taught you about manipulation, he said quietly, but they forgot about backup plans. Your grandmother wasn't the only one recording everything. I took the phone, its weight familiar yet different. Not evidence of their betrayal this time, but proof of their destruction. Sometimes you have to lose everything to see clearly what you need to do next. And I could finally see. The hospital boardroom felt like a courtroom, with Mother and Father seated on one side, their lawyers flanking them like guards. Grandma Evelyn sat beside me, her hand steady on my arm despite the doctors they'd brought to testify about her condition. I placed Mother's old phone on the table. Before we begin this competency hearing, there's something everyone needs to see. More fabricated evidence? Mother's smile was pristine, practiced. Sweetheart, you're only making things worse for yourself. I pressed play. Mother's voice filled the room, not her public voice, but the cold one I remembered from that birthday night. The video showed her and Father in their study, dated 3 years ago, discussing their plans in detail. The Singapore deal is almost final, Father said on screen. We just need to move the assets quietly, the girls' college fund first, then the offshore accounts. And Evelyn? Mother asked. Once we're established overseas, we'll have her declared incompetent. Everything transfers to us as next of kin. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Mother's lawyer started to speak, but I wasn't finished. There's more. I switched to a more recent recording. Mother talking to her doctors, arranging false testimony about Evelyn's mental state. Then emails detailing their plans to destroy my medical school prospects. These recordings are inadmissible, their lawyer protested, obtained without consent. By your own phone, I cut in, looking at Mother. The one you thought you'd wiped clean before replacing it. The one that kept backing up to your cloud account because you never changed the settings. Father's facade cracked first. You had no right... Like you had no right to steal my future? My voice stayed steady. To plan my grandmother's imprisonment while pretending to care about her welfare? Everything we did, Mother began, her professional mask slipping, was for the good of... Your Singapore dreams? Evelyn's voice carried unexpected steel. Your offshore accounts? Tell me, Karen, when did you decide your own daughter was worth less than your ambitions? The boardroom door opened. Uncle Derek entered with 2 police officers and a man in a suit. Miss Thompson? The suit approached. I'm with the Financial Crimes Division. We'd like to ask your parents some questions about certain irregular transactions and potential elder abuse allegations. Mother's perfect mask shattered. You wouldn't dare. After everything we've done for you. Done for me? I stood, finally letting the rage show. You stole from me, abandoned me, tried to destroy everything I cared about. And when that wasn't enough, you tried to lock away the only person who ever truly protected me. We were protecting you from yourself, Father insisted, but his eyes were on the officers. No, I gathered the evidence files. You were protecting yourselves, and you taught me exactly how to do the same thing. The next hour passed in a blur of statements and signatures. Mother and Father were led away for questioning, their lawyers scrambling to damage control. The competency hearing was dismissed, Evelyn's rights fully restored. You did it, Sophie whispered from the doorway. She'd slipped in during the chaos. I'm so sorry I didn't believe you sooner. I looked at my parents through the boardroom windows as they were escorted out. They'd taught me everything about power and control, about maintaining perfect facades while destroying lives. They just never expected me to learn those lessons so well. Amelia, Evelyn said softly, it's over. But it wasn't. Not really. Because in destroying them, I'd become what they made me. Someone capable of methodically dismantling others' lives. The victory tasted like ashes. My phone buzzed. Ethan. I saw the news. Can we talk? What will you do now? Derek asked, gathering the evidence files. I watched Mother and Father disappear into separate police cars, their carefully constructed world crumbling around them. They'd wanted to write me out of their story, but instead, I'd become its author. Now, I picked up Mother's phone, the instrument of their destruction. Now I learn how to write my own story, one that doesn't end in revenge. Because they'd taught me one final lesson. Victory and healing aren't always the same thing, and I had to choose which one I wanted more. The courthouse steps felt different under my feet as I left the sentencing hearing. Mother and Father's faces had remained stoic as the judge detailed their financial crimes, but I caught the slight tremor in Mother's hand, the tightness around Father's eyes. Their perfect masks finally cracking. You didn't have to come today, Ethan said, waiting beside his car. Yes, I did. I handed him the envelope I'd been carrying. My medical school acceptance letter. The board reversed their decision after reviewing the evidence. His smile was warm, genuine. You're going to be an amazing doctor. Like mother, like daughter? The words tasted different now, less bitter. At Grandma Evelyn's house, Sophie waited on the porch, uncertainty in every line of her body. We hadn't spoken since the hospital boardroom. I brought your old photos, she said, holding out a shoebox. The ones from when we were kids, before everything. Inside were memories captured in fading color, birthday parties, family vacations, moments when the smiles might have been real. Or maybe we'd all just gotten better at pretending. They weren't always like this, Sophie whispered, were they? No. I touched a photo of Mother teaching me to ride a bike. They were exactly like this. perfect on the surface, hollow underneath. We just didn't know how to see it then. Evelyn's voice carried from inside, where she was talking to Uncle Derek about the foundation we'd started, supporting children of parental abandonment, using my parents' seized assets to heal what they'd broken in others. The Singapore property's sold, Derek reported, joining us. The money's been transferred to the foundation's account. I nodded, thinking of the empire my parents had tried to build on stolen dreams and broken trust. Now it would build something else entirely. "There's something you should see," Evelyn said, holding out a letter. "I found it in your mother's old medical school yearbook." The paper was yellowed, the handwriting achingly familiar, my grandmother's, decades younger. A letter to my mother, full of warnings about ambition's cost, about the price of putting success above love. She'd seen it coming, even then. "She never read it," Evelyn said softly. "I couldn't save her from becoming what she feared most. But you saved yourself." Did I? I looked at the foundation paperwork spread across her table. Or did I just learn to destroy more efficiently? "You learn to heal," Ethan corrected, taking my hand. "Starting with yourself." The engagement ring caught the light, no longer feeling like a weight. We'd postponed the wedding during the trial, but now— "I have something for you," Sophie said, pulling another envelope from her bag. "Letters, from your parents, written in custody, before sentencing. I haven't read them." I took the envelope but didn't open it. Some words couldn't fix what was broken, and some breaks needed to stay that way to heal properly. "The Foundation's first fundraiser is next week," I said instead. "We're helping 3 students who lost their college funds to parental fraud." Like mother, like daughter, Sophie echoed my earlier words, but with a different meaning. You're building something from what they destroyed. Later, alone in my apartment, I finally opened my parents' letters. Their words were what I expected, justifications wrapped in apologies, manipulations hidden in declarations of love. But they didn't have power anymore. My phone buzzed with a message from the medical school board. My first rotation would be in pediatrics, helping children heal, protecting them from harm, building something new from the lessons of the past. I placed my parents' letters in the shoebox with the old photos. Not to forget, but to remember differently. They'd taught me everything about power, control, and destruction. But they'd also taught me, unwittingly, about resilience, healing, and the strength to choose a different path. The foundation paperwork waited on my desk, next month's cases ready for review. 3 more families to help, 3 more stories to change. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction at all. It's creation, building something beautiful from the ashes of what was lost. And I was just getting started.
The basement door slammed behind me with such force that dust particles danced in the thin beam of light streaming through the keyhole. My heart hammered against my ribs as I stumbled down 3 steps before catching myself on the cold railing. "Have fun with the spiders, Sienna." Madison's voice dripped with venom from the other side. The lock clicked into place, and her footsteps faded away upstairs, each one echoing like a nail in my coffin. "I'm Sienna, and this is how my 16-year-old stepdaughter decided to welcome me home after my first business trip as a married woman." "Madison, this isn't funny." I pounded on the door, my fist connecting with solid wood. The impact sent shockwaves up my arm, but the pain barely registered through my rising panic. "Let me out right now, sister." Silence answered. Well, not complete silence. Something scuttled in the darkness behind me, and my skin crawled. I fumbled for my phone, cursing when I remembered it was still in my purse, upstairs in the kitchen, where I dropped it before Madison asked me to check something in the basement. The darkness pressed in around me, thick and suffocating. I'd avoided this basement since moving in 6 months ago. Daniel had laughed at my unease, calling it cute how I'd send him down to fetch things from the storage room. If he only knew how his precious daughter would use my fear against me. "Help!" I screamed, knowing it was useless. Daniel wouldn't be home from work for hours, and our nearest neighbors were too far to hear. My hand brushed against something in my jacket pocket, the small flashlight I'd started carrying after that power outage last month. With trembling fingers, I clicked it on, the beam cutting through the darkness like a knife. Boxes, shelves, old furniture draped in sheets, normal basement stuff that somehow looked sinister in the harsh light. A mirror in the corner caught my reflection. Wide eyes, pale face, disheveled dark hair. I barely recognized myself. "Think, Sienna, think," I muttered, forcing myself to take deep breaths. The basement had to have another way out. The previous owners mentioned something about a crash upstairs made me jump. Madison's voice drifted down, speaking to someone. My blood ran cold when I recognized Rachel's voice, my best friend who was supposed to come over for coffee. "Sienna, she left about an hour ago," Madison said, her voice perfectly concerned. "Said something about running errands. I can tell her you stopped by when she gets back." That little snake. I could picture her now, all innocent smiles and worried eyes, playing the part of the perfect stepdaughter while I was trapped down here like some dirty secret. "Oh, that's weird," Rachel replied. "She texted me to come over. Maybe she got delayed. You know how she is, always running late." The conversation continued, but their voices grew fainter. No, no, no. Rachel couldn't leave. She was my only chance. I opened my mouth to scream again, but stopped. Madison would only turn it against me somehow. She'd been doing that for months, twisting every situation, making me look unstable, paranoid. Even Daniel had started giving me those concerned looks, suggesting maybe I was too stressed at work. My flashlight beam caught something else. A small window near the ceiling, mostly blocked by an old bookshelf. If I could climb up, but as I moved closer, I noticed the window had been painted shut recently. The paint was still tacky in spots. This wasn't an impulsive act. Madison had planned this. I sank down onto a dusty box, my mind racing. All those little incidents over the past months, my missing car keys, the accidentally deleted work presentations, the rumors at Daniel's office party, they weren't random acts of teenage rebellion. This was calculated, methodical. The flashlight flickered, and something inside me hardened. Fine. If Madison wanted to play games, I could play too. But unlike her, I had years of experience in the corporate world, where destroying someone required precision, patience, and most importantly, plausible deniability. I heard the front door close upstairs. Rachel was gone. I was alone in the dark with my thoughts and a growing sense of purpose. Game on, Madison. Game on. Daniel found me 3 hours later, huddled in a corner of the basement, my flashlight dead, his face twisted with concern as he helped me up the stairs. But it wasn't me he rushed to check on first. "Madison, sweetheart." His footsteps thundered up to the second floor, while I stood in the kitchen, still shaking, still tasting dust in my mouth. "I'm fine, Dad," Madison called down, her voice honey-sweet. "Just finishing my homework." I gripped the kitchen counter until my knuckles went white. The lies came so easily to her, wrapped in teenage innocence and practiced charm. When Daniel returned, he wrapped his arms around me, but his eyes were distant, already processing how to minimize this latest misunderstanding. "The door must have stuck again," he said, rubbing my shoulders. "I'll have someone look at it this weekend." "The door didn't stick," I said, stepping away from his embrace. "Madison locked me in there, on purpose." His sigh felt like a knife between my ribs. "Sienna, honey, I know things have been challenging, but Madison wouldn't do that." Shadow, our black cat, wound between my legs, purring. "At least someone in this house was on my side. Have you even asked her? She's been in her room all afternoon, studying for her chemistry test." He loosened his tie. A gesture I'd learned meant he was done discussing the topic. "Maybe you should lie down. You look pale." The doorbell rang before I could respond. Through the front window, I spotted Rachel's car. She must have come back, worried when I didn't answer her texts. Madison appeared at the top of the stairs, as if summoned. "I'll get it." "No," I said, my voice sharper than intended. "I'll get it." But Madison was already halfway down, shooting me a look that said she knew exactly what would happen. If I tried to tell Rachel the truth, she'd twist it, like she always did, make me sound paranoid, unstable, the crazy stepmother trying to come between a father and his daughter. Rachel's smile faltered when she saw my face. Sienna, are you okay? I stopped by earlier, but she was running errands. Madison cut in smoothly. Right, Sienna? I felt Daniel's presence behind me, waiting to see how I'd handle this. One wrong move, and I'd be the villain in tonight's dinner conversation. Again. Right, I forced myself to say. Sorry about that, Rachel. I should have texted. Rachel's nurse's instincts kicked in. I could see it in the way her eyes narrowed, assessing me. Well, I brought that book you wanted to borrow. Mind if I come in for a minute? Actually, Madison piped up. We were just about to have a family dinner. Dad promised to help me with my chemistry homework after. Daniel's hand squeezed my shoulder. Rain check, Rachel. I watched my best friend leave, taking with her my chance to expose Madison's true nature. Through the window, I saw our neighbor Ethan walking his dog, pausing to wave at Rachel's retreating car. He glanced up at our house, and for a moment, our eyes met. Something in his expression suggested he'd witnessed more than he let on. I'm starving, Madison announced, heading for the kitchen. Sienna, didn't you say you were going to make that pasta thing tonight? My hands clenched into fists. The pasta thing, the recipe she'd specifically requested this morning, knowing exactly how her afternoon plans would unfold. I need to check something for work, I said, heading for the stairs. You two go ahead. In our bedroom, I pulled out my laptop and opened a new document, started typing. Every incident, every misunderstanding, every manipulative moment since I'd married Daniel 6 months ago. Times, dates, witnesses, the paint on the basement window, Rachel's visit, Ethan's knowing look. Madison wanted to play chess, fine, but she'd forgotten something crucial about me. Before I met Daniel, I'd spent 15 years in corporate marketing, where documenting everything wasn't paranoia, it was survival. Sienna, Daniel called up. You coming down? I saved the document and named it Insurance. Be right there, I called back, a plan already forming in my mind. Madison might have Daniel wrapped around her finger, but she'd made a critical mistake today. She'd shown her hand too soon. And I'd learned long ago that the best revenge isn't served hot or cold. It's served with a smile and impeccable documentation. The email from my boss arrived during dinner. Another presentation corrupted, another deadline missed. My hands trembled as I read it on my phone under the table. Madison's voice chattering about her day, providing perfect cover. And then Jessica said the funniest thing about Sienna's outfit at the school fundraiser last week. My head snapped up. What fundraiser? The conversation screeched to a halt. Daniel's fork paused halfway to his mouth. The one you promised to help organize, Madison said, eyes wide with practiced innocence. Everyone was asking where you were. I had to tell them you forgot. I never promised. I stopped remembering the deleted calendar entries I discovered last week, the missing emails, the convenient, technical glitches that seemed to follow me lately. It was pretty embarrassing, Madison continued, picking at her salad. Mrs. Peterson said maybe you were still adjusting to family life. Daniel cleared his throat. Madison, that's enough. But it wasn't enough, not anymore. Show me your phone, he said, spisket. Madison clutched her phone closer. Show me your phone right now. Dad, she turned to Daniel, tears already welling up. She's being crazy again. Sienna, Daniel's voice carried that warning tone I'd grown to hate. Let's not. A notification pinged on my laptop upstairs. Another email. Probably another crisis. I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping against hardwood. I need some air. Outside, the evening air felt thick with unspoken accusations. I walked to the end of our driveway, then kept walking, my heels clicking against pavement like a metronome, counting down to disaster. Rough night, I startled. Ethan stood in his front yard, garden hose in hand, though his flowers looked thoroughly watered. Just family dinner theater, I said, aiming for lightness and missing by miles. Interesting performance the other day, he said, eyes sharp despite his casual tone. When Madison told your friend you weren't home, my breath caught. You saw that. I see a lot from my office window. He coiled the hose slowly. Like how your stepdaughter seems to have a habit of going through your car when you're not around. The missing presentation files, the corrupted emails, the calendar chaos. Why are you telling me this? Ethan's smile didn't reach his eyes. Let's just say I recognized the signs. My ex-wife's daughter had similar hobbies. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Daniel, come home, we need to talk. Careful, Ethan called as I turned to leave. Teenagers like Madison? They're playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. Back home, Daniel waited in his study. Madison's crying echoed from upstairs, a performance worthy of Broadway. This has to stop, he said, rubbing his temples. These accusations, this paranoia. Check her phone, I interrupted. Just check her phone, Daniel. If I'm wrong, I'll apologize. She's 16. She deserves privacy. And I deserve not to have my career sabotaged. Shadow leaped onto the desk between us, tail twitching. In the silence that followed, Madison's sobs grew louder, more theatrical. I think, Daniel said carefully, maybe you should stay with Rachel for a few days. Clear your head. Something snapped inside me. You want me to leave? Just temporarily, until things calm down. I laughed, a harsh sound that made Shadow's ears flatten. Things won't calm down, Daniel. They'll get worse, because that's exactly what she wants. His face hardened. That's enough. No, it's not enough. It's nowhere near enough. I moved toward the door, then stopped. But it will be. Upstairs, Madison's crying ceased abruptly. In that moment of silence, I made my decision. Ethan was right. This was chess, not checkers, and I just spotted my opponent's weakness. I'll pack a bag, I said, watching Daniel's shoulders sag with relief. But first, I need to send a work email. He nodded, already reaching for his phone to comfort his daughter. In our bedroom, I opened my laptop and created a new email address. Then I started typing. Dear Mrs. Peterson, I recently learned about the fundraiser incident and wanted to clarify something. Madison wanted to play, fine, but she'd forgotten something crucial about chess. Sometimes the queen has to leave the board to win the game. Rachel's guest room felt like exile, but it gave me space to think. 3 days had passed since Daniel suggested I clear my head, and my phone remained silent except for work emails, each one a fresh disaster I couldn't quite prove was Madison's doing. You need to eat something, Rachel said, setting down a plate beside my laptop. The smell of toast turned my stomach. I found something, I said instead, turning the screen toward her. Look at these timestamps. Rachel leaned in, squinting at the email logs. Every corrupted file, every missed meeting. They all happened when Madison was supposedly at debate team practice. Which means there is no debate team this semester. I checked with the school. The doorbell interrupted Rachel's response. Through the window, I spotted Ethan on the porch, holding what looked like a manila envelope. I have something you need to see, he said when Rachel let him in. His usual casual demeanor was gone, replaced by something harder. But first, you need to tell me exactly what happened the day your predecessor left the company. My throat went dry. What? He pulled out several printed pages, because according to these, Sarah Jenkins didn't just quit. She had a complete breakdown after her stepdaughter accused her of harassment. The toast in my stomach turned to lead. How did you... I do background checks for a living, Ethan said. And Madison's mother didn't just leave town for a fresh start, like Daniel claims. She fled after similar accusations from another teenager at her workplace. Rachel's hand on mine, squeezing tight. Sienna, what aren't you telling us? My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Madison's crying again. When are you coming home? It's a pattern, Ethan continued, laying out more papers. 3 women before you, all stepmothers, all professionally discredited, all gone within a year. But why would Daniel? Rachel started. Because he gets to play the hero, I whispered, pieces clicking into place. The devoted father protecting his daughter. the understanding husband supporting his unstable wife. My phone buzzed again. Madison this time. I miss you, maybe I overreacted. The perfect trap. Return home and face more sabotage, or stay away and prove I'm abandoning my family. There's more, Ethan said quietly. Your company's HR department received an anonymous complaint yesterday about inappropriate behavior toward a minor. The room spun. Rachel cursed, but I barely heard her. All I could see was Madison's innocent smile, her perfectly crafted tears, her father's concerned frown, as he suggested I take some time away. My phone lit up with another text from Daniel. We should talk. Come home tonight? Don't, Rachel said, reading my expression. Sienna, whatever you're thinking. But I was already grabbing my coat. I need to get something from the house, just one thing. It's a trap, Ethan warned. Once those accusations hit, I know, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. But my laptop's still there, with everything I've documented, everything I've backed up, including emails I'd never sent. Insurance, I'd called it. Now it looked more like survival. I'll go with you, Rachel offered. No. I checked my phone one last time. Daniel's last message glowed. Madison's making your favorite dinner. I need to do this alone, I said, thinking of the basement, of locked doors and painted windows, of a teenager who'd learned too well how to destroy lives while keeping her hands clean. But Madison had made one crucial mistake. She thought she was playing against another Sarah Jenkins, another woman who'd break and run when the accusations flew. She didn't realize she was playing against someone who'd spent 15 years documenting everything, who knew exactly how to make evidence disappear or appear. If I'm not back in an hour, I told Ethan, send everything you found to these email addresses. I scribbled down 3 contacts, my lawyer, my boss, and most importantly, Mrs. Peterson from the school board. Rachel grabbed my arm. What are you going to do? I thought of my hidden files, of Madison's careful manipulations, of Daniel's practiced concern. I'm going to teach my stepdaughter a lesson about karma, I said, stepping into the gathering dark. And this time, I'm not the one who's going to disappear. The house key felt heavy in my hand as I stood on my own doorstep, watching shadows move behind the curtains. Madison's favorite dinner, Daniel had said, as if pasta could erase weeks of calculated destruction. Shadow wound between my legs as I entered, his purr a warning rather than a welcome. The laptop was upstairs in my office, assuming Madison hadn't already gotten to it. Sienna? Daniel's voice from the kitchen. Is that you? I kept my footsteps silent on the stairs, counting seconds. 3 minutes to grab the laptop, 2 to transfer the files, 1, 2. I knew you'd try something like this. Madison stood in my office doorway, my laptop open on her lap. Her smile reminded me of a documentary I'd once watched about predators. That's private property, I said, my voice steadier than my hands. Like Sarah Jenkins' private emails? She turned the screen toward me. The ones where she begged Dad not to believe the lies? Or maybe Catherine Mill's resignation letter, the one she wrote right before her nervous breakdown. Each name hit like a slap. How long have you been planning this? Since Dad first mentioned you. She set the laptop down carefully. You seemed smarter than the others, though. I actually had to work for this one. Footsteps on the stairs, Daniel coming to complete their performance. I found something interesting, Madison continued, pulling up a document. Your little insurance file, the one documenting everything? Her fingers danced across the keyboard. It's amazing how easy it is to edit metadata, to make it look like someone's been fabricating evidence for months. The footsteps grew closer. Why? I whispered. What did I ever do to you? I did it. To me? She laughed, the sound like breaking glass. Nothing. That's not the point. It's what you did to Dad. Made him think he needed someone else. Made him forget about Mom. Your mother left because you people always leave. Her mask slipped just for a moment. But Dad stays. He always stays with me. Daniel appeared in the doorway, his concerned expression so perfectly rehearsed, it made my stomach turn. Everything okay up here? He asked, as if he hadn't heard every word. Madison's tears appeared on cue. I was just trying to apologize, Dad, but she started accusing me again. I looked between them, father and daughter, their routine polished by practice. How many times had they performed this play? How many women had stood where I stood, realizing too late they were never meant to have a permanent role? But I wasn't Sarah Jenkins or Catherine Mills. I pulled out my phone, dialed without looking, put it on speaker. Ethan Carter Investigations, the voice answered. This call is being recorded. Madison's tears dried instantly. Daniel stepped forward, but I held up my hand. Would you mind sharing what you found about the Jenkins case? I asked, watching their faces. And the Mills case? And especially about Madison's mother. Sienna. Daniel's voice dropped to a warning growl. Think carefully about what you're doing. The files are already sent, I said, though my heart hammered. To my lawyer, my boss, and Mrs. Peterson. Everything, including the basement incident. Madison's mask cracked further. You're lying. Check your email, Mr. Taylor. Ethan's voice cut in. You'll find everything there, including some interesting financial records. Seems paying off previous stepmothers leaves quite a paper trail. The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Then Madison laughed, not her usual calculated giggle, but something wild and sharp. It doesn't matter, she said. No one will believe you. They never do. They might not believe me, I agreed, reaching for my laptop. But they'll believe the recordings, the ones from every room in this house, including your little confession just now. Daniel lunged for the laptop. But I was faster. Years of corporate politics had taught me one crucial lesson. Always have a backup plan. One more step, I warned, and everything goes public. Every case, every payoff, every carefully orchestrated breakdown. How many careers have you destroyed, Madison? How many lives? She stared at me, and for the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. Your move, I said softly. But remember, I'm not playing chess anymore. I'm burning the whole board. The school board meeting room felt like a courtroom, with Mrs. Peterson's disapproving stare serving as judge and jury. My evidence lay scattered across the table. Emails, recordings, financial records, but Madison's tearful performance was stealing the show. I just wanted a mother, she sobbed, Daniel's arm protectively around her shoulders. But she kept trying to turn everyone against me. I watched the board members exchange glances, their sympathy clearly lying with the traumatized teenager rather than the unstable stepmother. Even my recordings worked against me. Madison's confession twisted into the desperate acts of a scared child, protecting herself from an obsessive adult. Mrs. Taylor, Mrs. Peterson adjusted her glasses. These accusations are very serious, but what concerns us more is your apparent fixation on documenting a minor's private moments. Private moments? My laugh sounded hollow, even to my own ears. She locked me in a basement. She sabotaged my career. She created a cry for help. Daniel interrupted smoothly. One we clearly missed, caught up in our own concerns about your stability. The trap snapped shut with brutal efficiency. Every piece of evidence I'd gathered now looked like proof of my own obsession. Every recording painted me as the unstable one. Even Ethan's investigation backfired. What kind of person hired a private investigator to spy on their teenage stepdaughter? I have statements, Daniel continued, sliding a folder forward, from Sarah Jenkins and Catherine Mills, about similar patterns of behavior. My blood ran cold. Of course he'd contacted them. Of course they'd back his story. Anything to stay buried, to keep their own broken pieces hidden. That's not, I started. But Madison's next performance cut me off. I should have told someone sooner, she whispered, tears perfectly timed. About the cameras, the stalking, how she'd follow me to school events pretending to be involved. The school board secretary was taking notes. Each tap of her keyboard, another nail in my professional coffin. I looked around the room, searching for one sympathetic face, but found only judgment and disgust. My phone buzzed. Rachel, probably wondering why I hadn't answered her warnings about this meeting being a mistake. Beside her name, I spotted an email notification from my boss regarding your immediate termination. Given the severity of these concerns, Mrs. Peterson said, we'll be recommending a full investigation and temporary restraining order. You can't. It's for the best, honey, Daniel said, his concern so convincing I almost believed it myself. We can get you help. Real help this time. Madison buried her face in his shoulder, but not before I caught her smile. The same one she'd worn in the basement, watching me pound on a locked door. I have proof, I insisted, my voice cracked. The basement door, it was painted shut. There are witnesses. You mean Mr. Carter? Daniel pulled out another document. Your private investigator's license was revoked last year. Something about harassment charges from his own stepdaughter situation. The final piece clicked into place. Ethan hadn't been helping me. He'd been setting me up, another player in Madison's elaborate game. If you'll excuse us, Daniel stood, gathering Madison close. My daughter's been through enough today. I watched them leave. Madison's tears had already dried, her performance complete. Through the window, I spotted Ethan waiting in his car, a silent reminder that I'd never really had allies, only carefully placed props in someone else's story. Mrs. Peterson cleared her throat. Mrs. Taylor, given these developments, we strongly suggest you seek professional help and stay away from Madison. My evidence sat useless on the table, transformed from ammunition into proof of my own unraveling. Every move I'd made, every precaution I'd taken, had been anticipated and turned against me. You don't understand, I whispered, but the room was already emptying, leaving me alone with the ruins of my reputation and career. My phone buzzed again. An email from Daniel's lawyer this time. Divorce papers, probably. The final act in Madison's carefully orchestrated destruction. I'd thought I was burning the chessboard, but I'd never been a player at all. Just another piece to be sacrificed in Madison's game. My moves predicted and countered before I'd even made them. The question wasn't how to win anymore. The question was whether I had anything left to lose. Rachel's spare bedroom had become my war room, walls covered with printouts and photos. 3 weeks since the school board meeting, and I'd finally found what I was looking for. In Daniel's banking records, of all places. My phone buzzed. Madison. Miss you, Sienna. Dad says you can come home if you agree to counseling. I ignored it, focusing on the document in front of me. Regular payments to a private account, starting exactly when Madison's mother disappeared. Not alimony, not child support, something else. The doorbell rang. Through the window, I spotted Daniel's car in the driveway. You shouldn't be here, I said through the crack in the door. Madison's in trouble, he replied, his face drawn. Real trouble, she needs you. I almost laughed. Like Sarah Jenkins needed you, or Catherine Mills, or Madison's mother? His expression shifted, something darker replacing the practiced concern. You don't know what you're talking about. Actually, I held up my phone. I do. I found her, Daniel. Madison's mother? She's not living her best life in California, like you told everyone. She's in a psychiatric facility in Oregon, under a different name, paid for by you. The mask slipped completely. You had no right. To what? Investigate why 3 women before me had mental breakdowns, why they all claimed Madison was destroying their lives, right before being diagnosed with paranoid delusions. A car door slammed behind him. Madison emerged, her usual perfect composure cracking around the edges. You're supposed to be gone, she spat. They all leave, that's how it works. Madison, Daniel warned, but she was already pushing past him into the house. You ruined everything. She grabbed the nearest paper from my wall, tearing it down. We were happy before you came, before all of them came. Were you? I kept my voice steady. Or were you just better at hiding it then? She whirled on me, tears replaced by something feral. You don't understand. None of you understood. He's mine. Madison, stop. Daniel reached for her, but she shoved him away. You promised, she screamed at him. You promised after Mom that you would just be us. But you kept bringing them home, trying to replace her. The pieces clicked into place. Not just a jealous daughter, A traumatized child, enabled by a father too guilty to set boundaries. Each new wife a fresh target for Madison's rage. Each breakdown carefully orchestrated to maintain their dysfunctional dynamic. "Your mother's not gone because she abandoned you," I said softly. "She's gone because she saw what you were becoming, what your father was letting you become." Madison lunged, but I was ready. The phone in my hand was still recording, still broadcasting live to Rachel's laptop downstairs, to my lawyer's email, to Mrs. Peterson. "Tell them," I demanded as Daniel tried to separate us. "Tell them how you did it, how you made each of us look crazy, how your father helped cover it up. You don't know anything." But her voice cracked, the perfect performance finally faltering. "Meg, I know about the payments, the facility, the NDAs they all signed." I turned to Daniel. "How long before Madison turns on you too? When you eventually try to date again? When you can't meet her demands?" "That's enough," he growled. But Madison was already backing away, her carefully constructed world unraveling. "You said no one would find out," she whispered to her father. "You promised they'd think Mom just left." Daniel's face went pale. "Maddie, honey, I did it for you." Her voice rose hysterically. "All of it. The basement, the emails, making them look crazy, just like you said Mom was crazy, so they'd leave us alone." The front door opened. Rachel stood there, her phone displaying the live recording. Behind her, Mrs. Peterson and 2 police officers. Madison's scream of rage would have been theatrical if it hadn't been so real this time. As the officers stepped forward, I saw her mask crack completely, revealing the broken child beneath the manipulator. "I'm sorry," I said, though I wasn't sure to whom: the traumatized teenager, the enabler father, or the women before me who hadn't escaped the basement's shadows. Sometimes winning feels exactly like losing. But as they led Madison and Daniel away, I realized this was never about winning. It was about breaking the cycle, even if it meant breaking everything else along with it. The basement door creaked as I pushed it open, dust motes dancing in the beam of my flashlight. 6 months of legal battles, therapy sessions, and sleepless nights had led me back here to where it all began. Shadow wound between my legs as I descended the stairs, each step solid now that Daniel had removed the loose boards. Evidence for the investigation, they'd called it. Evidence of a family's slow collapse. "You don't have to do this," Rachel said from the top of the stairs. "The realtor can handle everything." But I did have to do this. The house would sell tomorrow, and I needed to face these shadows one last time. My flashlight caught the window, still painted shut, though investigators had photographed it extensively. Madison's first confession had opened a flood of revelations. Daniel's careful documentation of each wife's instability, the coordinated gaslighting, the way father and daughter had perfected their routine through years of practice. A newspaper clipping fluttered from between 2 boxes. Madison's tearful interview about her mother's abandonment. The truth had been harder to swallow. A woman who'd seen the darkness growing in her daughter, who'd tried to get her help, only to be labeled paranoid and dangerous by her own husband. "Found something?" Rachel called down. "Just ghosts," I answered, moving deeper into the basement. My phone buzzed. Another email from Madison's therapist, requesting a meeting. I'd declined the previous 3. Some bridges couldn't be rebuilt, shouldn't be rebuilt. The last time I'd seen Madison, being led away in handcuffs, she'd looked so young, so broken. But I'd seen the calculation behind her tears, even then. A soft thump made me turn. Shadow had knocked over a box, spilling photos across the floor. I knelt to gather them, freezing when I recognized the faces. Daniel's previous wives, all smiling, all unaware of what awaited them. Each photo carefully dated, documented, like exhibits in a case that would never see trial. "Sienna?" A new voice from upstairs. "You okay down there?" Ethan. Not the ally I'd thought, but not quite the enemy either. His own stepdaughter had reached out during the investigation, sharing a similar story of manipulation and gaslighting. He'd been trying to warn me, in his way, though his methods had nearly destroyed me. "Almost done," I called back, but my hand shook as I picked up the final photo. Madison and Daniel, taken just days before I'd moved in. Their smiles held secrets I hadn't been equipped to read. Something scratched inside the wall. Shadow's ears perked up, his tail puffing. I shifted my flashlight beam, catching a glimpse of movement through a crack in the foundation. The basement had always held secrets, but some were better left buried. I gathered the photos and documents, more evidence for the growing Cass file. Daniel's trial would start next month, though Madison's juvenile hearings had already begun. Their perfect facade had crumbled, revealing the rot beneath. "Ready?" Rachel asked as I emerged, blinking in the bright light of the kitchen. "Almost." I moved through the house one last time, Shadow at my heels. Each room held memories of a life I'd tried to build, of a family that had never really existed. In my office, I retrieved the final item, my laptop, still containing the recordings that had exposed everything. At the front door, I paused. The house felt different now, its shadows less threatening, its secrets laid bare. But as I turned to leave, Shadow suddenly hissed, his gaze fixed on something upstairs. I followed his line of sight to Madison's bedroom window. For a moment, I could have sworn I saw a face, young, tear-streaked, calculating. But it was just a trick of the light, a reflection of what I'd learned about family, about revenge, about the fine line between justice and destruction. "Goodbye, Shadow," I whispered, but he'd already slipped away into the darkness of the house, choosing to keep his own counsel about which secrets to keep and which to reveal. I locked the door one final time, leaving the key under the mat for the realtor. As I walked away, I didn't look back at the house or its basement full of shadows. Some stories don't need an ending to be finished. They just need to be survived.